Okay,
Good.
thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 24th, 2018 HPC meeting.
2019.
2019, excuse me.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, right. This is a regular meeting of the Montclair Historic Preservation Commission. Notice has been given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting a copy of the notice on the first floor of the municipal building and by sending a copy to the Montclair Times, the Star Ledger, and the Herald News. Roll call, Mr. Petto.
Yes. Chair Bennett.
Present.
Vice Chair Hyman.
Present.
Mr. Greenbaum is not here at this time. Mr. Rooney.
Here.
Ms. Kane-Levy.
Here.
Mr. Reimnitz is excused this evening. And Mr. Angelo.
Here.
Okay. Did you want to? Oh, and Mr. Connolly. Sorry.
Here.
And let it be noted that we have a quorum. We have 4 people, so we have a quorum, and we'll begin. Mr. Greenbaum is expected in a little bit. But I would also like to mention Jenny Gillette has resigned from the commission, and we thank her for her service. She was an important part of the commission. So, moving right along, if you could bear with us a few minutes, we have our reorganization meeting tonight, so it'll take us just a few minutes to choose chairman and chairperson and some other slots. So, for the first position, nomination of officers?
Chair, Vice Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, reorganization for the chair. Does anyone have a nomination for chair?
I nominate Kathleen Bennett.
I'll second that.
Is there any other names on the floor?
You can have it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The second position, vice chair. Is there any
I
name out there?
recommend Jason Hinman.
Are there any other names out on the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Secretary. Let's.
Graham Petto.
Graham.
Graham has done an outstanding job. Is there a nomination for Graham?
I'll nominate Mr. Petto.
Mr. Petto, okay. And second
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And assistant secretary. We've asked
Janice.
Janice
Janice.
for the past few years, and she's not here to accept. So may we have a nomination?
Nominate Janice.
A tally for.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We look forward
You're
to
welcome.
a very interesting upcoming year. So I think what we'll do on the next on the agenda is committee appointments. And being that we don't have the full complement of members tonight, we'll put this off until next month. In the interim, we do have business that we are that's ongoing, and I think for that reason, the people that were on the committees from last year will continue to serve on those committees. Mm-hmm. So do we need to go over those, or does everybody knows their assignments, I think, from last year?
Just remind me.
Okay, Mr. Rooney.
I'm on Education
Yes.
and Outreach.
Correct.
And am I on Design Review Revisions or something?
No, you are just Education Outreach and the Landmark nomination.
And Landmark Nomination.
Yes.
Okay.
You're on
Graham, would
Design
you
Review
mind
for-
explaining the difference between the Revisions Committee and the Design Review and Redevelopment?
So revisions is essentially post-approval, and design review is pre-approval. That's essentially how that works.
Any other questions? No. The minutes from last month, does anyone have any corrections or addendums to the minutes from December 17th, I believe?
December 20th.
December 20th.
Just a minor technical revision. The estimated timestamps on the draft minutes, I propose we remove that, since when you click the YouTube link, it's chaptered.
Okay.
Would that be for ongoing or just for December?
Oh, probably should be ongoing, but
Ongoing.
I caught it on this draft.
Wait a minute. The time's off. We didn't do this at 5:30 in council chambers.
Oh,
No, I meant under
Yeah,
each
but
title,
I'm
like
saying
Oh,
that
the
just-
time- yeah,
The
no,
time
opening
should
it.
be 7:30.
correct. Thank you. up in the first paragraph, line 9.
Up here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Okay.
two revisions.
Mhm.
Okay, Graham, do you have those?
Yes.
Okay, motion to accept the minutes
Motion to accept as amended.
as amended. Second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're moving forward to committee reports. Education and outreach. We had a Researching Your Home workshop at the public library last week on Wednesday, I believe. I'll get you the definite date. But it's ongoing. We should have more this year, but that's the first one that we have this year. And then our collaboration with Montclair State University with the Pine Street Archaeological Program. The meeting will be on February 25th at the library at 2:30. That'll actually be the first class with the students. So
2:30?
put that down on your calendar, Mr. Rooney.
Sneak out early.
Yeah. Okay. And landmark nominations. I think we could speak about the grants now, being that they will be landmarks. So Mr. Petto has the information about that.
Yeah, so we met with the State Historic Preservation Office last week,
Last week as
Tuesday,
well, Tuesday.
To discuss grant administration for our receipt of the 2018 CLG grant funds to study the Wheeler Street and Oakcroft neighborhoods here in Montclair. The township side, we're going to start preparing an RFP to go out for a selection of a consultant to complete the cultural resource survey for those 2 historic areas. We're waiting some work on the state side to do some little paperwork to sign off on the grant agreement. And so we'll move forward with expenditure of those funds to pay the consultant to complete those 2 nomination reports. And secondarily to that, we have submitted a 2019 Certified Local Government Grant application to the state for a study of the estate area. Okay.
That we will
Yes,
hear
that we should hear hopefully
in May.
Who knows?
So that's for this upcoming year.
Yes, that's for this upcoming fiscal
And then just while we're on this, Graham, the report for the CLG government report for the year. For
Yes,
last
the
year.
annual report. That's typically due in March, so I'll start putting that together and we'll have that scheduled for our February agenda.
Okay, okay, great. Minor applications review?
Can I just ask one thing? What happened with the extension of the Bloomfield Avenue?
Oh, that has, I guess, been dropped because we never heard back from Mr. McCabe.
Yeah, I was afraid of that.
Yeah, so what we should do within this committee is discuss that further, because I think, with things going on Bloomfield Avenue, we need to really look at it more closely. But it really, we can't move forward with Mr. McCabe, so we'd have to do with something else. Somebody, another consultant. It would be the same process that we did last year. But good point. Okay. Minor application review?
Yeah, since the last meeting, we just had one minor application that Graham and I reviewed the other day. But I'm told that in the future there are going to be some more enforcement action, so a lot more will be coming down the pike.
Oh, good. And how is
for
that?
you.
Yeah.
We're hoping for some positive responses from some folks, so we'll
Oh,
see
okay.
what happens. So,
Great.
but we've been coordinating with code enforcement on a number of actions to start the new year. So,
No.
Okay, all right, great. Okay.
I need to clarify what day and time for
February 25th
February 25th.
at 2 o'clock?
Yeah, what do I have
2:30.
on the 4th? 2:30,
20
okay.
Okay, it's the 25th, it's a Monday, I'm sorry.
Right, okay.
Okay.
I'm just checking.
Revisions Committee,
we haven't had any.
we haven't
requests yet.
anything. And the Design Review and Redevelopment?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't believe there's been any meetings on the Orange Road parking deck, Steve. I don't believe so.
What have we done on the parking deck lately?
I don't think there's been any further updates.
I think we talked about it, and they were going to come back.
Mhm.
And that's it. We met out in the field some time ago. And we don't know.
Okay, so we've gone through all our committees. As there is no old business, we move on to new business. And the first referral is a referral from the Board of Adjustment, application 2595, 15 Locust Drive, James and Elizabeth Bettles. We're reviewing this project as it lies within the estate potential historic resource area identified in the 2016 historic preservation element of the master plan. The estate area is described as being developed by wealthy residents between the late 19th and early 20th centuries with a unique development pattern of large front setbacks. Architectural styles include Queen Anne's, Tudor Revival, and Colonial Revival. Tax records indicate that the house that the dwelling we're looking at today was constructed in 1962. So it's quite a bit newer than the other houses in the estate section. The applicant is requesting a variance of required minimum front yard setback for interior lots, less than the required average of the 4 nearest principal structures. The existing dwelling on the subject property has a front yard setback of 55 and 0.43 feet. The front yard setback of the proposed front porch is 41.1 feet. We are asked to decide if the proposed porch is consistent with the architectural style of the proposed estate historic district and send our recommendations to the Board of Adjustment. So, everybody's here?
Yes.
Okay. And you'll be sworn to give testimony, so, okay.
Are you both giving testimony?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And identify yourselves, please.
Okay. All right.
I'm Courtney Rombo. I'm the architect, and this is Elizabeth Beltish. She's my client,
All right.
and I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey.
Okay, so I'm just going to swear you in if you could raise your right hand. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you are to give to this commission this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
We do.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, what's your name again?
Courtney.
Okay, and you're the architect?
Correct.
And you're the owner?
Yes.
Okay. Have you received the copy of the recommendations from the historic preservation consultant, Mr. Conley? He's sitting to my left.
Yes, we have.
Okay. He's going to go over a little, just a review of those comments, and I'm just wondering if you looked at them and decide that we'll hear what he has to say first, okay?
Hi. So in my review of the existing house, the review is based on the architectural style of the existing home. So in my review, it's an American vernacular style. It's a simple simple rectangular block with some additions to it, simple gable roofs. And what's typical when it comes to embellishments on the house, it's typically in the American vernacular style. It's just a simple unadorned porches that frequently are on the front of the house with no embellishments. The porches details are pretty much eliminated. So if you think of Victorian architecture with all the embellishments that you would typically find on those types of porches, in this style, they would be eliminated. So it's very simple. There typically wouldn't be any railings, just simple posts and a roof. So everything that I've listed in the memo is something that we would be looking for. So a porch is absolutely appropriate for this style. The wraparound porch is something you would typically not find in a vernacular style house. But I don't know if you'd like me to go through each item, or
No, just kind of just as you have just the rationale behind some of these recommendations.
yeah. So the rationale is based on the style. So it's the vernacular style is porches are appropriate. The wraparound is something that you would typically not find. Roofs over stairs and gables that would kind of punctuate the entrance. something you would typically not find. So just think of just a very simple porch, columns, just a simple gable roof.
Are there any resources or exemplars that you could share that would just
that
give
I
a
could
better
point to?
Yeah, that you could point to.
No,
give
I
an
don't have any
example.
with
Not
me.
not on you, but just in general. Is this something that's within our design guidelines, or are there?
Well, yeah, like I said, that's the
Mhm.
typical of its style. So
Mhm.
yes, some porches, but very simple.
Okay.
Yeah, well,
The screened porches are typical as well. So that's something that is absolutely appropriate.
I grew up in a house that had wraparound porches and a bedroom. So it works, but what's the other question that I had?
Is this a question for Tom or for the applicant?
Tom.
Okay.
But that's all right. Go ahead.
So have you looked at these recommendations? What have you decided? Have you come with a different approach, or?
We have, and I think Tom has some great ideas. As far as the wraparound porch, Elizabeth and Jim feel very strongly that they want that look, and we would love to wrap it around the other way, but that would go way into the side setback and be too close to the neighbor. So we have the choice of not wrapping it around, but it works really well to get from the front door back to the side door in the mudroom area. And
mean,
I
right
like
now-
how it looks.
I
but
do
go
too.
ahead.
I think also like the way that our driveway is set up. Like obviously we'd love to have like a much bigger front porch, but it kind of gives us just kind of this wiggle room along the side of the house. And I think for that, it kind of gives us like beautiful line that you could look at. So as you drive around the cul-de-sac, you'd see it from the side angle because our house is sort of on an angle, and you get to see it kind of split like that, where you get to see this beautiful line both ways and have kind of this beautiful porch that you would see. But also for us, aesthetically, not only aesthetically, but also for like fluidity, it makes much more sense to kind of be able to move from the mudroom to the front door for kids and just in general. I think it just makes more sense that way.
Okay, and what about the, well, there are a few things that he suggested. The existing side door canopy, to keep that, eliminate the pediment over the front steps.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, that's not fine. Yeah, I actually modeled it both ways, and, you know,
I think it's interesting, right? Like I think you could do sort of this like farmhouse style where you have this front roof that kind of just stretches all the way across and creates like this one even line. But I think in order to create definition and entrance, you sort of need some sort of a peak, or you need some sort of like an arch in order to know where the front door is. And I think I particularly don't think that that's the biggest one for me. If that's somewhere where we have to compromise, I'm okay with it. But I think that it definitely gives definition to the house, because right now it's really flat and straight in the way it's designed. It's like one, like you said, like a box. It's like a boxy style.
That's part of the style, right? That's
right. But what we're trying to do
these are simple buildings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And
So
I
we're trying to
think-
keep it.
But I think we want to make it our neighborhood. We want to highlight and improve our neighborhood by adding some architectural, you know, defining moments. And I think that you could get that from kind of having this, creating sort of a little bit of an entrance to it. But I think in general, you know, again, I think our big thing is about putting that front porch on.
yeah. Can I give you guys these handouts so you can see?
Yes, yes. Oh, definitely. I should have. We should have. Now, is this an update to the?
It is updated. It's incorporating Tom's comments that.
Do you have enough for all of us?
I do, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So the first page is with the pediment still, and you'll see that I incorporated some of his other comments below. The second page is without it. You can see the side porch looks better.
So then maybe we should go down this list. The porch foundation composed of brick piers, not solid masonry. That's what you've changed on this plan.
I did change it. Elizabeth's not completely sure she likes that better, but it's also something that if we could get the wraparound.
I
But
think
it
that,
showing the stone.
I think the stone at the bottom, so what we're gonna do is like stone all the way around the bottom, sort of like that big pebbly stone, kind of bouldery, I don't know what you would call it. But anyway, we're gonna do that all the way around for a couple different reasons. One, I think it's structurally a lot better for the porch, but also that way you don't have, you know, animals getting in. I think also wood kind of degrades over time. But I think in general, when you look at it, and when we looked at a bunch of different pictures from like an architectural standpoint, I think that looked like stronger and more stately, and also more of that like farm style that we were kind of looking for, that like farm colonial.
I think we also figured it was going to be covered by shrubs mostly and bushes. So
yeah, and
probably weren't going to see.
We were
no
kind of
matter
go
what.
with like Nantucket greens and like wavy grasses and hydrangea there to kind of highlight it, highlight the stone and highlight the you know, because we went with this shaker natural cedar on the outside as the surface out there.
So, but what you've shown on these plans is the solid masonry is not along the entire
If
foundation?
you look at the original plans, the ones
The original one had the solid masonry all
Right.
around it. Courtney tried to doctor up something that it's not solid anymore.
Right.
and then in that one, I
Change it to the, okay. All
but
right.
she would prefer this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. And the porch deck is wood?
It'll be a mixture of mahogany, and then we're going to do along the rails and the upper railing, we're going to do something a little bit more weather-friendly, but everywhere else it will be mahogany.
What do you mean along whether?
Like, so the railing, like it'll be composite, the railing and the top piece, because we were worried that if water runoff hit the top rail and it was mahogany, it would need a lot of maintenance. We're trying to think of something. It's going to look classy with all that mahogany floor, but it's going to have, you know, something that's going to be a little bit more weather resistant along the railing.
Okay, and then
You guys have a preference towards us doing it a different way.
the flooring is at the floor is at the existing or the existing top step level.
What we have right now is kind of cement slate. And it's very limited. If you look at the picture, you can see it. It's like literally cement block with
Right.
like slate on top of it.
I think you're talking about just having it at the same level it is now.
Right.
Yes, we're going to have
Yeah,
it
it'd be at the same level.
Okay, so that's it. Yes. And have you changed the layout of the columns? Did you change them
I
here
did. I did.
to align with the window?
Yeah, I
Okay.
made it frame the window better, which I think it looks better, and
Right.
I think Elizabeth agrees.
Yeah.
And we took the shutters off because they're not. Actually, she has no shutters at all on the house.
Okay. And where the porch meets the building, use a pilaster and engaged column?
Yeah, we can do that. You don't have anything against that, right?
And then the balustrades and the railing between the columns.
Yeah, don't we need that by code?
No, it's not required by code.
You're not more than 30 inches.
They're saying just take this away.
The railing?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I'd rather have railing than it being just free and open. I think for safety for children and as well as in general for the aesthetics, what we're looking for, I'd rather have a railing there. I mean, it's really meant to, you know, I absolutely think that it's important to have that there for safety as well as style.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Seems like a little treacherous.
Americana, whether that, yeah, exactly. You just like fall off the end there. It's like a foot up, right? If you had no railing.
I think it's 28 inches, so
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
pretty-
under 30 inches.
I think it's not safe to not have a railing there.
Code requires you put a railing when it's above 30 inches. And that's it. You don't need it before that.
Yeah, I agree. Seems pragmatic to have it.
Okay.
But also, I don't think it's going to take away from the styling of that era. Do you?
Yes, I do. I think there was a number,
It doesn't have to be as tall. Because it's no longer code required.
yeah, typically you don't find railings and balusters on this style. there's a number of things that I don't agree with. The porch piers typically would stop at the deck, not come up, raise up higher than the deck, right? You would see, a fascia board that would span, over top of the piers.
Right.
So they should stop
And
below the
would-
deck. The spacing of the columns should be equal. So that needs to be looked at, I think, again.
Oh, you were saying they should be equal, not responding to the windows?
No, they should be planned, and so you really have to look at the placement of the windows and the columns. So sometimes paired columns may work, paired columns at the door to make this. There's a lot of different ways it could be done, but they should all be equal all the way across the front elevation.
That makes sense.
I may be okay with the wraparound porch if all the other details that you would typically find with porches were addressed.
Well, I like your idea of the shorter railing because, that would be better anyway because it would not block your view so much, but you'd still have the safety factor. And probably with the bushes, you wouldn't see it anyway.
Yeah, I believe there's a minimum requirement if there was a railing.
But if it's not
It's
required.
not
then-
apparent height.
Right.
Okay, so shorter railing, and then I could space the columns equally, but still make them respond
Is
to
there
the
a
windows.
bottom rail on the railing? I don't see one.
Yes, there is.
Is there?
Yeah.
You're saying whether it goes grooved in?
All the way down.
No, do the balusters come all the way down to the deck, or is
No.
there a bottom rail?
I don't think
Oh.
they're
That
tied
I
to
don't
either
think.
way.
Yeah, I don't see one there.
Yeah, I think they come all the way down.
What we were
Yeah,
planning.
typically we would have a bottom rail as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like 4 inches off the bottom.
A shorter railing with the bottom rail.
And the idea that the stone just comes to the bottom of the.
Yeah, that makes sense. Stone to the bottom of the deck.
Often you used perforated wood or lattice or thing underneath the.
I just think it's not as
It provides ventilation for underneath there so it doesn't rot.
Yeah, the span you have on the columns is too great. The 13.3 center line to center line, the 12 even is.
Okay, I'll add some more columns in and space them equally, but still make them respond to the windows nicely.
And are the porch stairs wood or masonry? Do you have an indication?
Wood?
I think they would.
Do you have a preference?
Well, I think with wood.
Would
To make it consistent with the deck.
Yep.
But yeah, we could go either way though, really on that.
Yeah.
It's up to you guys.
And you've got the shutters are gone.
But it's all like picture frame windows, like Nantucket.
Yes.
The windows in your, this is diagrammatic, right? It's 6/6 windows that are shown in the photograph. You're not replacing them, are you?
All the
They're
windows have
done.
already been replaced.
Yeah.
So this is the most up-to-date photograph? Or?
No, definitely not. I can, if you guys want to see my phone, I can show you a more up-to-date.
The photos in my memo, I think, showed.
These are current photographs here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're
Also,
multi-light
just to give you a little background, the windows that are in there right now, they're actually not the correct windows. We have the replacements for them. Some of them came in 9/9, right? It was 9/9 versus 6/6. It was a total mistake. They're gonna switch them out. They're there. They just gotta switch them out when the weather gets a little bit nicer. But
Yeah,
they're in my house.
second floor.
How funny is that? We didn't even notice it. My contractor and I didn't notice it, but my husband noticed. So they're getting replaced. It'll be very consistent.
Okay. All right. Let it be noted for the record that Mr. Greenbond has arrived. It's 8:10. Okay, so what do we have here? We'll go, Mr. Rooney, I know you've already asked questions, but do you have any
I've
more
already
questions?
asked.
No more questions. You can go to discussion.
No more questions? All right. So why don't we go down to the front porch? Our consultant has suggested that we eliminate the wraparound section of the porch, but as you indicated, the wraparound section is the section that's closest to the driveway, and that gives you access to the back door and to the front door around there. So I think that the wraparound porch here works because I think it's a practical matter more than anything else. Does anyone have any other
No.
comments about that? All right, so wraparound porch. And the one thing that you have, that Mr. Conley suggested that you retain the existing side door canopy over the, oh, but I see, the roof line is going to go all the way across.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right, okay. So the roof line that you've indicated here. So then we should go to the pediments over the front door.
Well, they've eliminated it in the second option, and on sheet A2 of the revised, actually,
I think they're both
they're
A2.
both A2, okay.
Okay.
So the,
Second and third sheet.
yeah, the third sheet, the third A2, I would recommend going with that design without the pediment.
I would agree.
I agreed as well.
You
I
guys
think,
all like it straight across.
yeah, I think when you look, even as you look, I understand the look you're going for, and I think it really adds more to the house the way that it is now. Okay, so we have the no pediment.
They want to go without the pediment. You okay with that? Okay.
And just to be clear, our role here, because your application is before the planning board, we're making the zoning board. Oh, you're right, the zoning board. We're making recommendations to the zoning board based on just the historic character of it. So you can make your revisions based on our recommendations, or you could plead your case to the planning board because they're going to consider all of the factors. Zoning board, all of the factors, not just the historic. So.
Does it make sense to have two options, our preferred option? And
Yeah,
then
you
alternate?
certainly can, but we're going to have our recommendations to the zoning board, and they're going to say what they're going to say. You can adjust your plans, you can have alternatives, but when you go before the board, they're the ones that are going to decide.
The zoning board has final jurisdiction of the approval.
Right. And our recommendations are based on the fact that the house is in the estate, potential historic district of the estate section, and also, as Mr. Conley has identified it as a vernacular, so American vernacular. So that's why we wanted to narrow it down a little bit more. Okay, and then the shorter railing, I think we've agreed about that, the shorter railing with the bottom rail.
Yeah.
And the stone,
Yeah, I agree.
which appears on A2, is that correct?
Third sheet of A2.
Right.
The masonry has been eliminated except from the columns, and I think our recommendation is to bring it down to deck level
Yeah,
as well.
down to deck level.
Okay.
And then the span of the columns would be to, as Mr. Conley indicated, the 13 feet is too wide a span to maybe consider double columns.
Or more
Evenly
frequently.
spaced, yeah.
Or more
So the spacing needs to be,
Yeah.
Right.
Should be equal,
right.
if we can do it.
Yeah. So the recommendation would be just the spacing and number of columns so that they're equally spaced.
About a number.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
It's difficult here.
it is.
And that the stairs should be wood.
Okay.
And that the foundation, which you indicate as being solid, as Mr. Rooney pointed out, a lattice foundation, and it will be covered by landscaping, but a lattice foundation is more practical.
It's also not as durable. We could create ways of getting air into the.
It's durable. I mean, the house I grew up in still has it, and it's over 100 years old.
We could do options.
Talking about lattice on the foundation?
Yeah. Under the
We were going
Between
to
the
do
piers.
stonework. We were going to have pretty big river stones kind of along the base. But we could create.
I mean, if you do it in
ventilation so that
stone, you have to put in ventilation.
Absolutely, 100%, I agree with you. You want it to not degrade the mahogany that we put in.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what else was there? Was there anything else, Graham?
That was all I had.
That was all. So how many, can you read that back to?
So-
Does anyone have any other comments?
Jim, who's also the owner, just wanted to ask if, do you have examples of American vernacular?
That I could send you?
Yeah, that'd be
I
great.
could,
So
yeah,
we
sure.
could like,
Yep.
yeah, do the columns.
Yeah, I can-
Yeah,
I
as
can-
part of our memorandum to the zoning board, I mean, I would ask that Mr. Connolly include that in that memo.
Sure. If you provide me one, and I'll.
Yeah,
It's
I'll add it to,
pretext for this conversation, because we're all discussing an American vernacular, and I think it may not be consistent or uniform understanding of what American vernacular is amongst the 19 people in this room. So I think that it becomes a little challenging to have that be written without pretext.
I just need to swear him in if he's going.
Yes.
Mr., would you like to speak? We'll swear you in, you can speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just step up to the
Right
microphone
up.
here.
I need to push rewind.
That's it. All right, just raise your right hand for us. Okay. All right, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are going to give to this commission is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. So if you could just repeat.
Okay, I'll do my best.
All right.
All I was saying is that I find it a little difficult for all of us, not just myself, but we're talking about, the touchstone being an American vernacular style here, which I think, with that as pretext, or there really is no pretext, because I don't think we have an example of in this this conversation at this moment in time, or prior to this moment in time, for a uniform understanding of what American vernacular is. So I just think that should be taken into mind as we move forward to the next stages of the discussion. It's challenging for me personally, I suspect, as many others as well. Maybe I'm more naive.
No,
of
I'll absolutely
architecture.
provide examples, yeah. No,
Yeah, but,
it makes
right,
sense.
but for the purpose of this context, we're discussing that as a touchstone, and I don't think there's a uniform understanding of what American vernacular is for this moment, at this moment in time. You're absolutely right. We can provide examples, and that'll provide good pretext for the next stage of discussions, which I understand will be is it zoning or planning? But for this moment in time, it's I think it's difficult to coalesce on what that is, right? Because we don't have examples of what that is.
Okay, well, we'll make sure that we have examples of that within the memo. So with that as the first point, Mr. Petto, can you
I
enumerate?
apologize if they're out of order, but
Okay.
I'll try and rearrange them. The entry steps up to the porch should be constructed of wood. The stone piers should elevate to the deck only, not extend above the deck level. The rail along the porch should be shorter in height and also raised off the floor of the deck. The columns along the porch should be evenly spaced along the facade of the building. The pedimented entryway should be eliminated from the roof line. And then, did you want to say something about the foundation wall?
I just wanted to get back to what you, because you
Oh,
said
go
it
ahead.
so
Sorry.
quickly.
I said it
The
quickly.
shorter railing
rail.
with a bottom rail. Shouldn't
Yeah, I said, oh, sorry. Yeah, I just said raised off the bottom rail.
Right,
Yeah.
and then, what did you say about the columns?
Equally spaced?
Evenly space the columns along the facade.
Evenly spaced, but I think we don't want to obscure your picture window in
No,
the
you
front.
just want to have something more regular.
Right, okay. So that, but even space, I mean, not every 4 feet.
Right.
Okay, all right. And what was the last one was the...
It was just a question about if you wanted to make a comment regarding the foundation.
Well, whether you just, I think the opinion is that it needs to have some ventilation underneath it, and lattice would certainly be, a good choice.
I think the use of this ornamental stone is a little excessive. So while I understand your concerns about making it solid, I think maybe brick would be a better
it'd be more
material.
appropriate, yeah.
Just for my clarification, when you say excessive, what do you mean?
It's not typically seen at the base of porches in that type
I
of
think
use.
when we were talking about architectural design, when we were looking at the front porch, we looked at a bunch of different options. And so we had she sent me a lot of different pictures, and I think that was just one of the pictures that we really liked was something that had this kind of stone that went across the front. So maybe we could provide you with that picture, and you could see kind of what we're envisioning, because I think it's hard to really see it, in a kind of black and white, structural drawing.
If you're going to do a stone base, would it basically be what would be a simulated stone foundation?
It would be like, almost like that kind
River
of
stone?
rounded big river stone.
But it would constitute a surface treatment to what would be the structural foundation of the house.
Right. Exactly. It would be decorating kind of a more
It wouldn't have the
concrete.
structural
No, I know, it's a veneer.
Integrity of that.
Right, veneer,
So
yes.
my only comment would be, if it's appropriate, I would suggest putting a drip edge of bluestone along between the clapboard and the stone so that the water goes off.
Yeah, anything that would keep, yeah, that sounds wonderful.
A drip edge.
I agree, I totally agree.
And we'll create relief areas.
And our contractor is very, very detailed, and he's really into, making sure things last a long time. I'm sure that he would take all these things into heart if there were certain things that we had to do in order to make sure that we had the right airflow, as well as, something that wouldn't degrade over time or degrade the property. And again, we don't want that to, obviously want something that's gonna, last a long time.
Yeah, we'll look into creating a rhythm with reliefs that respond to the columns.
Mm-hmm.
Is this coming back to the revisions committee?
That was going to be my question to Mr. Petto.
Somebody request?
I think that would be a great idea. Back to the revisions committee. Before it goes, when is it up before the planning, before the zoning?
So that would be post-approval. So
Post-approval, okay.
Yeah, so if you want to review finishes or materials, you can
Oh,
ask
okay.
that.
Yeah, we'll add that to the.
But it would be after,
recommendation.
this is scheduled at the February 20th zoning board
Yeah.
meeting, so.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, on the revision, I'd like to see the boulder stone instead of the ashlar, so we can see what it
definitely.
really looks like.
Yeah, I agree.
Are these
Even
natural
natural.
stone or
On
is
the
it cast
drawing.
stone?
I'd like to do natural. We'll have to look at the pricing, but yeah, I'd like to do natural if I
Robin's
can.
rock.
Yeah.
I can't, I'm not supposed to say that.
No, Mr. Greenbaum.
Nope.
Okay, so, yes, so we'll make a recommendation that comes back to the revisions committee. All right, so I think we've covered all the points. Okay.
And, one final comment, just going back to the variance itself. My understanding, the reason that the variance is sought is front setback.
Right.
And currently, it's non-conforming at 55 feet. The porch is going to reduce that another 10 feet to 45. I don't really view that as a major issue,
Yeah.
so I'm, in support of the grant of the variance, notwithstanding the comments. So I would just like that included in the
Yeah, that's a
memo.
good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, it won't be a deterrent, it'll be an addition to the neighborhood, yes.
I appreciate that.
Sure. All right, well, good luck.
All right, thanks. Thank you all. Thanks.
Good night.
Are you related to Rich Rombo?
To who?
Rich Rombo?
It's me.
That's one.
Are you related to Rombo?
Yeah, that's my cousin.
Oh, okay.
Tree guy?
Got it.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, good night. Okay, where is...
On the agendas now, all the materials are on there.
No, it's
Online. Yeah.
yeah, this house, it looks like it.
Okay.
I don't get it. We should email Grant, if I don't get it
Yeah,
right.
this side. Well, yeah.
The Wednesday.
Our next application is a referral from the Planning Board, application 2602, 41 The Crescent, RCVM Management LLC, and we're reviewing this project as the property is also surveyed as this property is identified as a potential resource in the 2016 HPC element of the Township Master Plan, also in the estate, and it was surveyed under Preservation Montclair in the 1980s. We're looking at a sign. The proposed freestanding sign, as what was submitted, is permitted in this zone, which is OR4, and it meets the requirements of Montclair Code 347-110. The applicant does not require variance relief. Tonight, we'll be looking at the proposed sign, and we will send our recommendations to the planning board. Now, have you read Mr. Conley's, before we begin, we need you to be sworn in and where did he go?
Sorry.
Okay.
Can you identify yourselves for the record?
Mariano Verrico.
Okay, and your connection to this application?
I am part of RCMB.
Okay. And you, sir?
Robert Crook, and I'm the other owner of RCMB.
Okay. Can you raise your right hand?
I'll do it, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I remember
gotcha.
that.
Okay.
All right, thank you, though. Can you just swear or affirm that the testimony that you are going to give before this evening to this commission is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And have you read the recommendations from Mr. Conley, our HPC consultant?
Yes.
And have you proposed to come with a different?
Well, actually, Tom, if you could just, again, just explain your rationale in terms of your comments.
I only had two comments, basically. As long as the sign conforms with the current sign code in Montclair, it would be fine. And my only other suggestion would be maybe looking at, instead of two posts for the sign, maybe a single post with a hanging blade sign may be more appropriate for that corner and may help with the visual around the corner.
And I think that's what you had there originally in front of the building before. I understand there was an accident at the building. Okay.
Yes.
So it was there before.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Is it a farmer's insurance building?
It will be. So basically, it was the post sign that was from the previous business that was there, which was a dental office. But that sign was obviously knocked over. So farmers' requirements are the single sign with the two posts for the requirements to have an office. That's why we went with that.
Right.
And it's configuring to the size of the farmer's sign and also in accordance with your signs as far as the shape and size or the size. And the reason why they do that and the reason why it's posted on the corner is because we don't want anyone to hit into it, obviously, like they did the front doors of our building. But nevertheless, you could see it from each corner then, because we have traffic coming from the Trinity and Crescent, the Crescent and Trinity also. So it would also give good business sight to what is in the building. So people are looking for farmers insurance, they know where to go. Because we do have two addresses, so it's kind of hard. One is 20 and one is 40. We still can't figure that out ourselves. So it is the way the house was built. So that is why we wanted the double sign. I do understand your point as to the single blade sign, but the single blade sign would not hold, what it needs to hold.
No, I understand, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Substantially not. So we would appreciate you, any of your feedback, but we'd also appreciate you to understand why.
So your client requires a 5 foot, is that 5 foot wide?
So I'm the client.
Okay.
I'm a CPA, I'm a certified financial forensic. I've got 6 insurance licenses and 2 financial service licenses. So in order for me to put my office here, farmers require signage. So either on the side of the building, which there's no way we can put a farmer's sign on the side of the building, or an awning with farmers on it. There's no way we're going to put an awning on the side of the building. This is the only thing that could be tastefully done. So farmers also has to build the sign. I can't even take the logo and give it to somebody because of copyright things. So somebody in California will actually have to build the sign. So we just took 12 square feet, which is the requirement, and looking at the most tastefully preserved buildings on the Crescent, which is a dental office that has a hanging sign, and tried to come up with something that I could put the logo on. We are making substantial investments in this building, replacing the cedar shake. I mean, this building hasn't been renovated, I'm guessing, since 1960. We're replacing all the electrical, all the plumbing, some of it with the help of Range Rover that drove through the building. I mean, we've already gutted the entire first floor. The house will be repainted. Mario owns M. Francesco. We both do. We're married. He's a designer. We live in Essex Fells. We are very much, invested in Montclair. We have, I've been involved in revitalizing downtowns from Morristown all the way down to Maplewood. I recently ran for Congress against Mikey Sherrill. Although I'm not offending anyone. I understand what's going on here in Montclair, and we want to help revitalize the area. So the sign will be done as tastefully as possible. But I have to also conform to farmers.
Right. No, I don't doubt your commitment. It's a huge undertaking. I just question why is it a requirement that it's 5 foot wide? Is that what I'm looking at?
It's not. It's 12 feet, 12 square feet.
Right.
So the logo, I could use a smaller logo, but then I'm not getting the 12 square feet. I want a sign that's 12 square feet, and I have to put that logo within that. I've seen other farmer signs where they have a picture of the agent. I don't think that's appropriate in a historic, area. I've seen where they put the name of the agency across the bottom. Honestly, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. I think the thing that they will approve, because I also have to get them to approve it, is just the logo.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to get this approved so that I can say all I want to do is put the logo up.
When you look at what the building looks like now, and you have your front view facing the sign at this point, we're redoing everything. We've gutted the entire inside bottom half down to the basement. We're actually, in our architectural plans, redoing the outside as well. Also, the top apartment, there will be all new windows, a whole new front facade, sides facade, the new driveway. All these bushes have been pulled out due to the fact that the car ran into it.
Right.
And Mariana, I don't mean to diminish all the work that you're doing on the building, but that's not before us right now.
Right.
We're only looking at the sign.
No, I'm saying.
It's only the sign.
The sign is like, for impact, for everything.
Is the old sign shown in the view from Trinity Place there? It looks like it's to the right of that pedimented entry,
that little
right?
post sign that was
and that was
down.
one post, and it looked like it had a blade sign on it, right?
Yeah, but small.
Yeah.
They were small signs. And even the blade signs, when you look at it, you can't define the farmer's logo, and you can't define farmer's insurance. It wouldn't even fit on a blade sign properly.
But I understand. I'm just wondering about the width of it, the 5 foot width of it. If you came in a half, is it possible to make it?
We can make it 4 feet. That's fine.
So it's 5 by 2.5, is it?
2 feet 4.
In accordance with your code, you're stating 12 square feet as a sign.
Okay.
So under code 347-110.3,
right,
that's what we're actually abiding by.
Right.
So we're not going anything over. If you want us to go a little bit under, shorten the width of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That could be something, as long as we can have our, full logo.
Right.
Because again, like Robert said, no pictures, no names.
Right. No, I understand.
I want to make it as clean as possible. I mean, if I were to let corporate farmers, they want a metal sign. I don't want a metal sign. I want a wooden sign. And I told them from day one, they had to come and inspect the property and even, give me the okay to put an office here. I mean, you have no idea.
Well, Mr. Rooney, do you have any other comments? Aside from the size?
Yeah, the size, I think you're right. Make it a little smaller. And are you wedded to the idea of it being on a diagonal?
I am actually, yes, due to the fact that you could see it from the corners. And since we're corner property and we're on a hill.
If it were perpendicular to the front of the building, you could see it on both sides.
If it were, but you'd have to, okay, so you have the stop sign right there. So if we did it the way you're saying, when the stop sign is right there, it will be in view of somebody turning. If you understand what I'm saying. Even if you shorten it down now, when we did what you're saying, it's going to be somebody leaning forward, having to look past the sign. The way we have it and where we have it up there, because we did this visually with our car, it's not impeding upon anybody's view.
The problem is you can't find the building, because the 41, the Crescent, is actually, if you go up to, I don't know if you all have a picture of the driveway. It's actually in the back entrance on the back column. And I don't know why that is 41 the Crescent, because the front of the building is actually 20 Trinity. But that's not, that is actually not the address of the building. So for anyone to find the building,
right,
it is.
Yeah, the post office is the one that makes that decision.
I know. But
And they go to the back.
Where your mailboxes.
We're actually reconfiguring the building so that my entrance will be in the front.
Okay.
But the tenants, the residential tenants will be through the back from the park.
So you want it visible from Trinity and the Crescent?
Yes.
That's the idea. Okay, now I understand. Any other further comments, Mr. Wait, just a second. Any other further comments?
That's it.
Ms. Kane-Levy? No?
No.
Okay.
Is it possible that rather than a two-post sign, you could do something cantilevered off of a post?
The weight, the wind, the impact, you know,
like
a car hitting it.
Instead of being landscape, more of a portrait mode, aspect ratio, and suspended.
Again, we're only going in accordance with what their designs are based upon, you know, what they're saying would look best for us and what their formats are. You know, they don't have swinging signs. That's just not like an option for them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
So I think our recommendations would be to bring the width in somewhat, and then you could add a little bit of height. And then other than that, I recommended planning board approve it as is, subject to that
The size
resizing.
of it.
Yeah.
Resizing.
That might be nice. That might be, to make it more attractive, I may suggest.
Sure.
You know, put plantings along the base of the sign that kind of reduce the post visibility in the lower level, so the sign kind of is rising up from some plantings.
Well, we were planning on doing landscaping similar to that.
For the totality.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it would tone it down.
Right.
So if you look at the Connell Agency or you look at Sanford Agency.
Yes, they have.
It will look like that.
Right.
The words will just say farmers.
Right.
But it will have that same type of.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. So yes. So our recommendation is to
just not make it so wide.
Wide. Reduce it down a foot if you can.
Right.
On the sides.
Yes, on the sides,
Right.
and then. But the height, I guess you have to keep it at that height.
Yeah, we have a certain height.
Okay, and then to add some landscaping, which when you do the rest of the property. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will be.
Do we have to do
fencing? Do you guys handle fencing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
And now.
Now you have to come back. And we want to see everything done when the time you come back.
Darn it.
All right.
We do like wood.
There you go.
We do like
we do like wood also.
Oh, good.
Good luck, guys.
Yeah, good luck.
So much.
Okay. So it's 8:40, and our next thing on the agenda is the presentation by Mary Klugman. And Mary was commissioned, Ms. Klugman was commissioned by the HPC to do a study of redevelopment zones and their potential impacts on identified historic properties within the township of Montclair. And you began this project when? In
April, I
April?
think. April or May.
Yeah, and completed in December. So thank you for getting it done in a timely fashion.
Thank you for all of your help. Stephen and Kathleen were very helpful during the comment period, so I would get some feedback on my drafts, and so that was really very helpful. Thank you. And Graham, of course, keeping me straight and narrow. So the draft that I turned in December, I'm going to have a presentation just to run through it quickly. I'm hoping that you've all read it.
This one.
And then open up for discussion, because it's a very interesting aspect of Montclair that we've had such considerable.
Can you ask Graham to pass me one of the presentations? I didn't receive one.
Oh, I didn't pass them out.
No, Graham, the full
Oh, they only
report.
received 2 copies, so I just left them through the chair.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But there was a set of the first 20 pages in your packet.
I didn't get it this week.
Oh, you didn't receive the packet?
Okay, sorry for the interruption, Mary.
That's okay.
Where were we?
Let's see. So I think the idea of Montclair's redevelopment has certainly had a lot of discussion over the past, 20 years since it started. And it started in small little bits, and now it's moved up to larger and larger bits. And so I explored all of the plans that are on the website of the township to see exactly what was going on, really, and what, especially after the HPC or HP element was developed and went on the inventory. It was very easy to understand how the boundaries of the redevelopment plan were going to affect historic properties or not, depending on what the plan was all about. And the plans differ very widely in quality and what they take into consideration. So I thought if we can run through these. Oh, wait. He's going to have his.
Yeah, he's got it.
He just handed it.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I forgot.
I also have the handouts of the presentation, the PowerPoint. Just slides to jot down notes on if you would like.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I took it.
Oh. No signal. I have it in my little thing. Would it work off my?
Great.
Was that recorded before?
I took it out because it was trying to.
Oh,
Should we take a 5-minute break?
We can.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break while you figure out the
sorry.
technical aspect of it.
Everybody has that.
What happened?
I have no idea.
Oh, the screen, the computer blacked out?
All the.
Got any technical expertise, Tom?
This, no.
It's not letting me log in at all.
It's really hot, so.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, there.
But then, let's see. This is my top. Password is not. Oh wait, there you go. You know where?
I had to go upstairs.
The whole laptop just went wrong.
Maybe use this thing around. Did you turn it off and then?
The problem is that we had it all set, and then we all set. Yeah. It was just
That was really good. Because I was having trouble. Can you do a pass?
Interesting.
All right, yeah, if you want to run upstairs.
Yeah, I tried to
get the other way. That's not the only.
What do we do with first things off?
We may just have to have you work for this law.
Okay. It's not as fun.
Not as fun, but we luckily have plenty of time. Oh, wait.
Something's not right.
We're good.
Okay. Let the record show that it's 8:50, and we are up and running.
Thank you for your patience.
Sure.
This is the just the introduction. That was actually a historic photo of downtown Montclair. I don't have the year of it, but anyway. And this is my thanks to all of you for supporting this this study. So here is the goal.
There we go.
To review the plans, to compare them with the historic inventory, the new inventory that's come up from the historic preservation element, and see if in the plans document, in the plan text, whether historic properties were ever taken into account, what design elements were taken into account, what massing elements were taken into account, and then how, if the properties that were adjacent to the district, how were they affected, or were they affected? And then how to better accommodate the change in the plans that we saw that didn't take them into effect very well. How do we make them better? And what worked and what didn't? So here's just a basic statutory basis. It started in 1949 with the New Jersey Constitution that had an act that grew out of that provision that said you can have redevelopment and replanning of blighted areas. And it also permits taking of private property for public use. That went through, the blighted areas was a particularly difficult knot for many people when who contested the idea that my property is not blighted. And so it went through a lot of litigation over the years. And finally, in 1992, New Jersey changed its regulation, and it calls it the Local Redevelopment and Housing Law. And it also named districts, not blighted districts, but areas in need of redevelopment. And then it has a list of about 12 criteria that would allow communities, municipalities, to designate certain districts. And with each designation, it's based on a recommendation for the planning board, and then the council designates, and then from that, a consultant is appointed to develop a plan with certain goals that the municipality really would like to have for that particular area. So since 1998, when the first one was created, we've had 10, well, actually 12, but 10 of them have been given plans, and some of them are realized. The ones that are still underway are the Seymour Street, the last 4, basically. And the 2 that were designated but did not have a redevelopment plan are the Glen Ridge redevelopment areas, which is quite large, and the Montclair Center Gateway Area 2, which is the opposite side of Bloomfield Avenue from Valley and Bloom and the hotel.
What was the one prior to that? The 2 that were, what was the first one?
Glen Ridge Avenue. And you'll see it on this map. This map is actually on the website of the township, but it's dated 2011, and it doesn't show some of the districts that we have now. So the Glen Ridge Avenue is the purple one, right at the top left edge of the Transit Village boundary. And as you can see, it goes down quite a long way from the 6 corners, almost to the 6 corners, and then it goes down the parking lot area down past the Crane Park, I think. That's where the Crane Park is.
Mary, I don't see in that list that you included the recent Lackawanna Plaza redevelopment plan.
The original one is the urban renewal, and that was under the 1949 Act. And Graham opined that that was not really, I tried to get a copy of the Lackawanna plan, and the Lackawanna plan is not really available. At least there's a lot of things that seem to be missing. It was 1979, 70s sometime, and some of the districts, some of the documents apparently have gotten lost. So there are
conveniently.
People but yeah, it hasn't. There was only a map that went with the National Register nomination that Graham pulled out, and that showed the threat, basically. The threat was the redevelopment, urban redevelopment, and that's the cause for why Lackawanna was listed on the National Register. Because of the urban renewal plan.
But wasn't there one recently established and then rescinded in some way that this current group of developers has come forward with and presented to us, and then it went away? So what's the story?
I don't have that plan.
That plan was never adopted by the council.
The plan was still a designation.
Yeah, I guess it's technically, yeah, but there is no plan that was adopted
So
by the
if
council.
the
for
applicant
that.
decides they wanted to change their strategy and return to an area of redevelopment, can they do that?
Because it was
No.
not.
That's creating a redevelopment plan.
Yeah.
That's something the town does.
Right, but there was a redevelopment plan, and the Lackawanna applicant originally presented their application on the premise of a redevelopment plan, but you're saying the town rescinded it, or they withdrew from it?
They decided that they didn't want to proceed, and they just filed an application.
But
So
if-
the town just stopped.
So
But
if-
again, this goes
Yeah.
beyond Mayor's presentation. So.
Yes, it's a very complicated story, the Lackawanna Plaza, and I don't have all the details. And because it was under a different statutory basis, so we were trying to compare apples to apples, and that's what we've got.
And I just would like to mention, you do mention it on page 8 under methodology. So it's not like you ignored it.
No, I included it
Right.
saying it was like a first a neo redevelopment plan, but it didn't have the same elements that are now required under the 1992 Act. So it may have been very different. I lived here during the time when that was going on, so I remember that it was a very active time, and there were a lot of meetings. I was raising a baby, so I didn't really remember any of that, but I do remember that it was a very big issue at the time, and that's what generated the concern about the historic buildings in that area. So going back to the map, we have this map as of the township map of 2011. And then this is not in chronological order, but this is just to show you what has been developed since then. So this is the Eastern Gateway. Then recently there's the Hackensack University Medical Center and Mountainside. That's under construction right now. Then there is the Pine Street. This is the only district that oh, thank you.
Because I'm trying to follow you and I can't. So just if you can. So Pine Street, we're here. Okay.
Pine Street's red. Yes. That's the only area that's a rehabilitation area. Area in need of rehabilitation. Although they still have to have a redevelopment plan. And the last one is the Seymour Street redevelopment area. That's up there. Thank you. So the first one to consider, and the first one that actually was done was by Karen Kadis, who was very concerned about housing. And she developed this what I think is a very unusual scattershot, is what Graham calls it, but I called it a non-contiguous area of properties. And it was aimed at rehabilitation, trying to get people to rehabilitate structures that were failing and vacant, and they couldn't be occupied. And as you can see, they were all over the most of the south end. There's only one that was way up on the northern side, and that has been redeveloped. I think there's a new house there now. So of all of those, there were many of them, I think 28, were renovated or rehabilitated, and just 3 didn't make it. 3 were demolished. Of the renovations that took place, some of them were done really well, and many of them were done taking away a lot of architectural detail, covering it with vinyl siding, replacement windows that were vinyl windows, and so that was one of the faults of those, is that she, or the plan, didn't really care, except that it be habitable and look tidy and neat. And that was, certainly valuable at that time. Then we had, the next one was after the Montclair connection. We had the Bay Street redevelopment area. And there were 2 phases. The first one was the firehouse, the new firehouse on the senior living. That's the arrow pointing to the top. And then the phase 2 was the Montclarian development of residential apartments down by the Bay Street Railroad Station, and also the garage. So that was all part of the Montclair connection improvements that were generated. Around the same time, there was a redevelopment. This is another little micro plan for the redevelopment of the Montclair Community Hospital. And that was a building that was non-conforming, it was vacant, it was obsolete, it wasn't able to be used again as a hospital, and so it was offered as a redevelopment area. So the Montclair Heights was built 2006, 2009, and actually even though it's a townhouse development, it was still much more compatible with the surrounding residential area than the hospital was. The Pine Street redevelopment area, this is the area in need of rehabilitation, and this was one of the most successful of all of the plans that I looked at because sorry, I just love that picture from 1925. It shows it was a really, low scale. It was just a nice neighborhood. It was very ethnically homogeneous. And then by 2000, which is the National Register photo, there were houses that were boarded up, houses that were, not invested in recently, and it was really kind of a sad neighborhood, even though it had a lot of heart. By then, it really needed some refurbishing. So it was declared an area in need of rehabilitation, and that brought in, and the plan focused on how many financial incentives that would bring to this area. And it was known for a long time as a wonderful place for single mothers to live, actually. It was very safe, more toward the railroad that was just known as a wonderful place. And this helped them refurbish their houses and get new financial input into the district. It also, the township, did a lot of street improvements. So they planted trees, there's some green space, there's new sidewalks, new curbing. It really made an incredible difference in this neighborhood. However, the downside to that is that there are now reports in the local news that it's also engendering gentrification. So that's one of the issues. It's not as affordable as it was, and it's right near the train station. And so there's such a thing as too much success as far as affordable housing, but it's certainly, from a physical standpoint, this has made a big difference in that area. And here is the beloved Haynes site. This was the subject of my thesis for Master's Historic Preservation thesis. It was, as much as I love this building, I called it the Lauren Bacall of buildings, it was really unsuitable. And many of the branch department stores from 1934, when they all became windowless, they became very hard to redevelop because they had enormous floor plates and no windows. So as much as I love this building, I finally had to accept the fact that this was not going to survive after it was vacated in 1989.
Was there ever any outcry to save the building? Was there ever
Only me. People thought anyone who defended this building was crazy because it was 1952. It was totally unlike anything in Montclair, and they felt that it was discordant, and they were happy to get it discordant also because it was vacant and because downtown retail was not surviving, and so it had to go. So in its stead, as part of the amended Haynes redevelopment plan, there were 3 sites. One was the Haynes department store site, and that's now the Sienna, which is 7 stories. It has 1 step back. And then it had the multi-story parking garage at the Crescent, which was more reflective of the color scheme of the Sienna than it was of the neighborhood. Mm. But it still had a relatively innocuous design as far as the neighborhood was concerned. This is the area that is currently the subject of an amended Haynes plan. And the amended plan allows for the development of a residential building that is, and after Graham, after this meeting on Tuesday, I wasn't sure whether it was 5 stories or 6 stories. Would you have?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're still working on that, I guess. And so I couldn't get much solid information about this plan, But in general, the general parameters of it is that it will be a multi-use resident with retail on the first floor, I think. It will have a setback from the western side, from the Unitarian Church, which is good. The design of this building should be carefully monitored by the Historic Preservation Building. It has, across the street, there is the former Baptist Church, National Register. Its annex is National Register. The Carnegie Library on the corner is National Register, and you're part of the Township Historic District, so the Town Center Historic District. This is the Elm Street, New Street, Mission area. And this one, actually, it's sort of non-contiguous. It has one outlier at the New and Mission Street area. And that is currently vacant. We don't have that. But at the bottom, you have the parameters of the larger section, which is the Bullock School, the new elementary school. And that is in that large square. Here, I'll show this. This is where the school is. This is a playground. And this is the empty place. This is Hartley that you'll see on this drawing here. And this is New and Mission over here. So on the bottom, it shows what the redevelopment plan is for Bloomfield Avenue between Hartley and Elm. And it has two corner buildings that are 5 or 6 stories. And then it has a central gateway into the parking area of the school. And generally, they've left all of the other buildings. Currently, at the corner of Elm Street, there is a dealership, car dealership, and a automobile repair store on the corner of Hartley. So the question is, are those buildings appropriate to this side of the street? From Elm Street down to Pine Street, on that side of the street, is really mostly outside districts, except for this section right here. And it's great, sort of low scale, not more than 4 stories. They're really, they speak about the old days of that area. It's a 4th Ward, and it was Italian district, it was Black district, it was Irish district, it was you know, the working people's district. And I would hate to see this become so overdeveloped that we lose that sense of that district. And then we have Montclair Gateway Center, Valley and Bloom.
May I just ask you, what would be your concern? Would it be a height issue?
Height and massing. Could be, you know, maybe they would put together several properties and build a larger building that would, you know, homogenize the streetscape. You know, who knows what people are thinking about, but that would, I mean, I like the idea that we're preserving the sense of that original, you know, low-scale commercial district. And this is the Montclair Gateway Center Phase 1, Valley and Bloom and the hotel. There's pictured down at the bottom. The plan of this was written by Phillips Price Greigel, and it was great. This plan had everything in it that you could possibly want. Pedestrian-friendly areas, seating areas, setbacks, change in texture, change in massing, and very little of that seems to have made it into the actual realization of that plan from the contractors. It has changes in color, it has changes in texture, but it doesn't have the articulation of the mass that would have made it more interesting. The storefronts are very bland, unlike what was described in the plan. And the pedestrian-friendly areas are 5 benches that are put around the corner. So that's the extent of whatever pedestrian friendliness they are.
May I ask you, how is it that that area was able to be developed in a way inconsistent with the master plan that was drafted by the gentleman you described?
Apparently, there was a review by the HPC, right, Kathleen? Was there a review of the plan, or was there comment about it?
Thank you.
That was right when I began.
Actually, the HBC didn't have anything to
Yeah.
do with it because
Oh, really?
it was not a part of it. It was a redevelopment, and it didn't have anything to do with it.
And it's
At
outside
the
of the
very
historic
end, they
district.
did.
Yes, it's outside
I
the historic
just-
district.
Outside.
And Graham had brought up an interesting suggestion, which is I guess a policy suggestion. I wanted it written into the ordinance that every single plan for redevelopment should have a post-approval review. So when you get the construction documents, then you can look at it again and say, well, this doesn't conform to this, or this doesn't conform to what you said in your concept rendering, or it's just a check to make sure that what is built really is what you had planned on.
That seems to be a problem in this town from time to time. May I ask you, does it make sense possibly for the HPC to be by ordinance part of the review process of any area of redevelopment?
I would love it. I think that would be a good solution, and in fact, that's one of the recommendations at the end. In many of these plans where things have gone a little awry, the HPC has not had anything to do with it. And well, you'll see on another plan that even when there's no historic properties in Glen Ridge, for instance, with the Mountainside Hospital project, Glen Ridge Historic Preservation Commission was consulted and commented, and they made some excellent comments. Montclair didn't even see the project because there were no historic properties.
Montclair, meaning the HPC, didn't see it.
HPC didn't see it, although Montclair certainly was part of the redevelopment plan process. So I think that would be, for any redevelopment area, large redevelopment area, I think it's critical that the historic preservation, they are the design body, you are the design body, and you should have some input. Here's the Eastern Gateway redevelopment plan. This is opposite the other blocks east of the Hartley and Elm Street area. So this is between Pine Street and Hartley. Really, that's where it winds up. And these buildings were done by local architect Paul Sionis. And I think, except for the loss of the Mount Carmel Holy Church, they have a much better scale compared to the opposite side of the street, which is the historic side of the street, and outside any district. It's in the town center historic district, but not any individual buildings or anything like that there. But Paul has designed two buildings that are very different from one another, but they do reflect a little bit of the industrial flavor of that area. They have metal awnings, they have the texture of the materials is really consistent. It just seems to fit a lot better than many projects have.
Just going back for a second, you talked about the south side of Bloomfield Avenue, and this being on the north side of Bloomfield Avenue. You were talking about before the area by New Street, Hartley, and you talked about how you prefer it to maintain its lower scale, keeping the massing down. But one of the issues that we have to consider all throughout the whole Bloomfield Avenue corridor is that the south side of Bloomfield Avenue, by virtue of its geography, has the ability with height to block the light, completely shade Bloomfield Avenue and the street across, and the sidewalk on both sides of the street. So whereas this side of the street, the north side of the street is not affected by, doesn't obstruct any light really. The south side of the street could have a negative, detrimental effect if we had height because of the obstruction of light.
Well, that's true. I don't think that was considered in the plan that I looked at, but.
No. And maybe we can hold our comments to the end so Mary can finish this?
So here is the Mountainside Hospital Hackensack University Medical Center project. There's the demolition of the nurses' quarters, which is that red rectangle. That's where it was located. And they replaced that with a up-to-date, state-of-the-art medical building. That's what they're building there now. They also went through, the town lines go right to the left of that red rectangle and cuts through the blocks opposite the hospital. So that's why Montclair and Glen Ridge both weighed in on it. And as I said, the Glen Ridge, obviously they had more to do with the building, so they had made a lot of comments about the building, but they did talk about the landscaping and protecting the neighborhoods that were adjacent to this project. And so there was quite a 20-foot setback, I think, that had to be landscaped, and that was all to make the parking areas seem more friendly to the neighborhood. You can see on George Street on the right-hand side, it's a very quiet neighborhood that's tucked in behind where the parking lot is going to be, near the garage to the hospital. And the corner of Bay and Highland down there is at the corner that you turn to go to the front of the hospital, and those are all gone. Those are demolished to make a parking area. And here is the Seymour Street plan. This was another Phillips Price Greigel plan, but it went through so much community process. There were discussions after discussions about what was going to be where and what kind of uses were going to be there. And they had massing studies. They had things that other plans didn't even think about generating. So at the end of it, this plan seemed to be the most comprehensive and the most right-thinking in terms of process. And I think that the result, although it's under construction now, the result, I hope, will be good. So what I learned from all this is that smaller and slower changes are sometimes better. Not always, but sometimes. Working with the community makes better projects. That's the Seymour Street project is my go-to project for that. And design consultations with the Historic Preservation Commission, as you said, should be required for all redevelopment plans and construction documents. And the historic preservation zoning overlays don't seem to survive in the redevelopment plans. For instance, the Church Street lot, although it's within the town center, it's not going to be reviewed in the same way. Tell me if I'm wrong, Graham. Redevelopment plans generally don't take into account a historic district. Public opinion can sometimes influence that, but and then here was another idea about requiring design guidelines for all new construction in any redevelopment area, which is one of your goals. And then I threw in the post-approval construction documents, even though I'm not totally understanding exactly how that works in practice, whether it's a policy, whether it's enforced by ordinance, whether it's how do you write it into the plan. You know, I'm not sure how that happens. Okay, so that's it.
Thank you. So we have comments or questions? Briefly.
Did a great job.
Well, thank you.
And the actual document itself is huge, right?
Well, this is the actual document, but it's double-spaced.
It's
it's
double-sided.
Two-sided,
right,
yes.
right.
Oh, you should speak about the matrices that you put together, Mary.
Oh,
That's
yes,
I think that's what you're referring to,
Yeah,
Steve.
there's the matrices.
Right. Yeah, these and what they are.
Yes, on the in the back section, each one of the plans has a matrix that I selected out from each plan what I thought were the most critical for historic preservation. That's massing. If there was any mention of architectural design issues, if there was any setbacks, that any mention of historic buildings at all, I put that in these. I had a column for historic properties that were in the vicinity. I talked about the goals of the plan, and then compared what's existing there now with what was proposed in the plan. And some of them were no change. Some of them were large changes, like the hotel now has 7 stories, I think it is, with 2 setbacks, or 6 stories. It's a lot. It's beyond.
Stories.
9 stories? Yeah. Yes. So sometimes they really exceed. And then I had a map showing where it is in the township and mapping the district as well. So, and then a little paragraph on sort of what the effect is to historic properties.
Okay, thank you. Caroline, do you have any comment?
Well, my comment would be, yes, it seems it's a very interesting and well-written plan. So how do we implement your recommendations? And maybe that's a question for Graham or our attorney.
Can I just interject? I went to the council meeting on Monday night, and during public comment, I introduced the plan, and I invited the mayor and the council people here, and Ms. Baskerville is here tonight as the 4th Ward council person. So, as an introduction, I think that shows you. I think this is something that we could ask the planning board if we could present it to the planning board. And then I think there has to be a discussion, especially with this post-approval review, how that actually gets done. Is it
Right.
an ordinance, or does it go into each redevelopment? And then again, I think it's getting the HPC to be more active within the discussion and the process. So is that okay? Do you?
Yeah, I've just questions on next steps moving forward. I know the genesis of this project was ultimately to develop more comprehensive design guidelines for new construction. In all of the historic districts as well as just the commercial districts, and this is kind of the first step, just evaluating redevelopment areas. And in doing this evaluation, you make some really good recommendations, just generally about what works and what hasn't necessarily worked. But moving forward with the information that you've collected, are there any specific, characteristics or trends in the different areas that need to be replicated with respect to future construction in those areas or in similar areas? And is that something that can be put into the matrices?
Design guidelines are particularly problematic because each neighborhood has its own identity. Each neighborhood has its own built environment and history and materials and texture. And so you would have to find out where the redevelopment plan was and what's proposed, and then say, okay, here's what the design guidelines be. Now, I did see in one of them the Bay Street Station redevelopment plan. There was a recitation of 1-to-1, height of the building to the width of the street. And that will work sometimes. Sometimes that will be very effective. But in other times when the street is really wide, like Bloomfield Avenue, does that mean that it's 1-to-1 is good or bad? And I don't know that. So I think the timing for when, first you have to identify where the redevelopment area is. Like Glenridge Avenue, we know that that's on the boards. It's going to be, it's designated, but it has no plan yet. So that could be an area that's already designated that you could say, we recommend X height, no more than X height. and looking at the neighborhood, what other characteristics of the neighborhood you can put into it. It would be very general, though, and it wouldn't be as specific as you would want to be, you know, when you actually come up with a developer who's going to design a building. You know, he wants to know, he or she wants to know, okay, what are my guidelines? Okay, so I have a maximum height, I have a maximum massing, I have, you know, but what is it really going to look like? So, and the other thing is that I don't know how you, there's no way to assure yourself that there's going to be a good architect or a really mediocre architect. So they can take design guidelines, but one will interpret them in a much more creative way than another. And so how do you push a less talented architect along to get some creativity in there? I don't know if that's possible.
Well, I'd like to address that point. It seems to me, and you made reference to this, that the process associated with the Seymour Street redevelopment seemed to have been the most vigorous, most broad-based community engagement, and if I recall, I believe Iris Smith drafted a document, a very substantial document, outlining kind of the overall gestalt of the area and some of the best features and some of the things we wish to avoid and some of the things we wish to encourage. We want to encourage architectural ambition, and yet at the same time, we're not looking for what's the word I'm looking for, but a fake traditional. We want something that has authenticity, its own internal logic. So I happen to believe that, and I'd like your thoughts on this, that Iris Smith's prepared documents were probably one of the greatest tools to result in what hopefully will become the most successful project from a process like this. Do you agree that that document was useful?
I think a lot of that was incorporated into the redevelopment plan. If you read the redevelopment plan, it did have a lot of Ira's touches to it, his narrative. You could see his narrative was there. I could hear him talking. He loves how you communicate good design to other people. And I think it was very helpful. I don't know, I mean, I'm not sure who the architect is or whether they've taken...
You mean Seymour Street?
Seymour Street.
Well, I think, I mean, the HPC was actively involved on the Seymour Street property, and I know the planning board was actively involved, and I think one of the reasons that made it a success, I think, was the iterative process and feedback from the HPC and the planning board. And it just so happened that that particular developer also, that project, they had architects and the developers were more receptive. So, but I just think that there's a lot of great content that was created in preparation for Seymour, and I can't help but think we can't recycle a lot of that into some of the design guidelines going forward.
Well, that's the problem, because the Wellmont area is a very specific area. It had, you know, according to Ira, you look around you, see what's there. How do you reflect that in what you're building?
And just to be clear, you're talking about the Seymour Street design guidelines, not the HPC design guidelines.
But what I'm saying, what I'm saying is
for
more
each redevelopment area.
Exactly. Right.
Let me say this: the language and the concepts that were presented by Ira in that particular redevelopment summary, I don't know what you would call his document, guidelines, I would say are probably pretty versatilely applicable to the general Bloomfield Avenue commercial corridor. I think there's enough generalities and statements that
I think the area by Pine Street, between Pine Street and Hartley, is totally different from what's up by Valley Road and
I agree.
Orange
I'm
Road.
saying some of the general concepts. I'm not saying all the specifics, but
I think you have to really, you know, you have to burrow down and get into what the details of what he's saying is. we need Ira to look everywhere.
Right.
But I think, Mary, what you've said is that each area is site-specific and should be looked at as an individual site. And although there are some commonalities that you can, which you pointed out.
Principles.
Okay, principles, but I think your point is well taken, that they are, each one is individual.
In some plans, they are taken into account.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Montclair Center Gateway,
Mm-hmm.
that plan, another Price, Phillips, Greigel, I mean, they recited all of those things, you know, not necessarily the scale, because they didn't reflect the scale on the opposite side of the street, but they did take into account what it should have.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a redevelopment plan under consideration, then I think that's the point at which you can intercede into the process,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hopefully, and introduce those design concepts on site-specific kinds of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think in our HPC, in the historic preservation element in the master plan, if we do have redevelopment plans in historic districts, that we should be, or we are able to review them.
But you made two suggestions. One is that any redevelopment, even if it's not in the historic district, should be potentially, it would be beneficial
Mm-hmm.
to have the HPC actually review and participate in the process based on the skill sets that we can bring to bear. So that's something that I want to agree with you on that suggestion. But the other thing you made a point of is that when an area of redevelopment is within a historic district, if I understand correctly, that supersedes the historic district constraints at present. And you're suggesting that's problematic.
My understanding is that the redevelopment plan supersedes the overlay district
Mm-hmm.
that's underlaying the redevelopment plan.
It supersedes everything.
Yeah. So that's why the design criteria in the plans are really critical.
Mm-hmm.
And they should reflect, in fact, some of the plans recite that, the design guidelines for the Historic Preservation Commission. And not all of them, but some later ones do recite it. And from the inventory map, it's on the top of the page of the copy so that you can quickly access it. It has included every single point of blue is a historic property that's been identified. And you can't throw a stone in Montclair without hitting some district or property or identified property or preservation Montclair property. They're everywhere. And
As I remember how we got into the hotel to start reviewing that, is we pushed it that you could see it from the historic district.
Mm-hmm.
And that reflects reflects off the historic district. You're building something that is compatible.
right, and the same is the same is for Valley and Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that very easily.
This is, so what you're saying is, if I understand correctly, the Valley and Bloom and the new hotel, by virtue of not being in the historic district, the HPC was precluded from participating. However, what Steve is saying is that because it affects the historic district, because it has a contributing or detractive effect potentially.
If it's viewable, you can see it from the historic.
Therefore,
or if it abuts it.
So what you're suggesting, and I think I understand, you're saying you argued at one time that the HPC should be involved because it affects the historic district. And what happened? It was. I'm sorry? No. But the HPC, but you're saying is that the HPC was not given that opportunity.
No, not on Valley and Bloom. We got it at very late stages.
So, I think that anybody else have any other comments? Well, thank you, Mary. I think
Thank
you've done
you.
an incredible job.
Can we all get copies of the full binding?
Yes, there is a couple of little typos and things that I would like to fix.
Oh, okay.
Before I give you the final.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
is it, Graham, have
Yeah,
you
It
put
is on the
full
website.
plan is available
The draft
to
is
download
on
from the
this-
agenda.
Okay,
Yeah, it's up on the website.
on the website.
And Graham, is there a way that we can ask the planning board if Mary would come back and do a presentation like this? Maybe an abbreviated presentation, 15 minutes for the planning board?
Yeah, we'd just have to discuss Mary and allocation
Right.
of resources to cover.
But I mean, that would, exactly, but that
Yeah,
would be...
there'd be a memo correspondence we can work on. putting something
Yes,
together.
okay, because I think this would be...
I can go faster.
Yes.
I think the goal would be in front of the planning board is to make them aware of, looking back retroactively as to the processes and the outcomes, and to maybe now assess if in fact there are some best practices that can be identified that produce better results, things that are regrettable that we can change going forward, and that your report helps substantiate that. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so, too.
That was the goal.
Yes. No, just...
Yeah, I think that you've accomplished that. Can I just ask, you mentioned that there was a map that was not updated.
Oh, on the inventory, there were a couple of maps. I'm trying to remember whether it was the Haynes was not on it.
Right.
And the Crescent deck, I don't think was colored gray. They're colored gray if they're redevelopment areas.
Is there a way to get that updated, Graham? Okay, all right,
Yeah.
that would be great.
It's
if
on
we-
my list of
Great.
errors in the thing. So
Okay, all right.
we've covered that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next on is public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to get up, say anything? No? Okay, so then our next thing is the resolution, which is the resolution Township of Montclair Historic Preservation Commission. Has everyone had a chance to read this? This is about retaining.
Yeah, I have one edit.
You have an edit?
Yes, the date of Mr. Connolly's proposal needs to be corrected. So, but I'll correct that. It's in the 1, 2, 3, 4th whereas clause.
And what is it corrected to?
I need to identify the exact date as to what it will be corrected to.
Okay. Oh, okay. That might not be.
I don't have it on hand. So.
Yeah, that was my question. So the allocate the $10,000 allocation, that's for this budgetary year.
Correct.
From now going through.
Correct.
31st. Okay.
Through the end of this year.
Okay. And that's, right, exclusive of the escrow account.
Correct.
Any other comments on this? Do we have I just signed it. If we're in agreement, we sign it, right? I signed it? Do we have to approve it? Oh,
It's a motion.
individual vote?
Well, you can do a motion and then.
Okay.
So, I move to accept the resolution as amended for the
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, then I think we are ready to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.